behind having
Vulnerable.
low self-worth. Do you know what I would say? Is that I used to be scared to do any to care at all about any of my fashion or like anything that I wore. And like now that I'm sort of finding myself a bit more, are we rolling here? We're rolling. And now that I'm finding myself a bit more, I feel like, you know, the rings and stuff like that, I'm celebrating the fact that I'm into it now.
You definitely care more. Not you plural. You care more when you feel better about yourself.
Yeah. Do you think like you perform better as well? So like if I ever have to
In the
play,
bedroom.
if I no, that's not what I was gonna say.
Yeah, go on.
If I have to go in goal when I play football, I feel like if I've got a goalie top on and some gloves and I feel like a goalie, I'll play better in goal.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a phenomenon. Like if you are struggling to kind of get into keep fit or working out, if you feel better with the gear you're wearing, like you tend to kind of put
Yeah, man. Like
characteristics in.
if you get some new gym gear, the first week in the gym when you're wearing it, you feel better.
Yeah.
Same as like when you get like, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nothing like a fresh pair of kicks, though, innit?
Oh, mate.
I haven't had any for a while.
Do you don't get fresh kicks that often, do you?
Not as often as you, but I'm still fairly prolific in the kicks game. I'm not like some people just like put holes in their toes section.
My daughter would say to me at this moment, "You're such a dad." My eldest daughter says to me, "What did you say? I am prolific in the
Kicks game." I thought that's not that old sounding.
It's very old sounding, mate.
Is it?
How are you anyway?
Why? Because I use the word prolific.
I'm very prolific in the kicks game. Can you imagine saying that when you were 14 at school?
I probably did actually.
Yeah, he probably did at the private school that you went to, innit? Oh, he didn't like that. You didn't like that, did you?
Everyone knows I went to private school on this.
Mate, I asked you how you are. I've got to use my phone today because I've not got my tablet.
So you can record the answers.
So, yeah. No, they're just my notes. Just be aware when you see me on it. It's not because I'm bored of what you're saying, although I might be.
You probably will be.
I probably will be. It's
Can
because
I
I'm
ask you
looking
a
at
question.
Answer me a question.
Answer the question you asked me, which was, how am I?
Yeah, go on.
I'm fine. I'm doing okay.
Do you remember when we first ever started this podcast, we used to go, "How you doing, mate?" And you used to go, "Yeah, all right." And then I'd go, "Yeah, all right." And then your mate called it out and said, yeah.
You need to change. I think that shifted the game, didn't it?
It did, mate, actually. It was a big moment. Do you know we've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now?
Wow. Yeah.
Did you know that?
Now that I think about it.
We started it in March
Yeah.
of 3 years ago, whatever that is, 2020.
Wow.
We need to do a podcast episode where we just listen back to the first ever episode that we did.
And take ourselves apart.
Days, I bet it's terrible.
Cringy.
It was all on Zoom for ages, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was in lockdown.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mate, how are you? We've just had half term.
Easter.
Easter half term. How was it?
It was very good. It was very good. The first week I was working.
Yeah.
Second week I was off.
The whole week?
Yeah, I was off the whole week.
You had an out of office on your
an out of office, yeah.
email.
Which gave me hives. Putting it on. But, no, genuinely, I really took time out and it was great. I had to do a couple of bits. That's always pretty normal for me, but I'm surprised at how little I did and how comfortable I was with it. But I filled my time with other stuff, and I think that's what makes the difference. If you don't fill your time, if you're not doing stuff, then your mind wanders, doesn't it?
What's the best thing you did?
Watched Dungeons and Dragons with the two kids.
What did you think of that film?
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not my kind of. I'm not a big fantasy film geek.
Yeah.
Not my kind of cup of tea. So I thought it was going to be worse than it was, but
It was
fun.
all right, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Hugh Grant's all right in it, isn't he?
He is good. Yeah, he's good.
I went to watch it just me and Leah. Why are you looking at me that for?
No, I knew that, so I had to react for a second time.
Talking of second reactions, right? This is completely off the topic for a second. I saw a video of a dude on TikTok. He's like got a small following and stuff, and the video hadn't been viewed that much, but he did what the title of it or something was like, when you have to come with the same energy on a WhatsApp voice note for the second time.
Yeah.
And the video is him going, haha, yeah, mate. Oh, that's so funny. Did you, and then he goes, oh. Haha, yeah, mate. And he has to bring the same energy.
so many
I've
times.
done it so many times, man. Yeah, it's good. Anyway.
Is the second time round always better?
I don't know, man, but like,
It's sharper, it's cleaner.
I've literally had to redo like a minute and a half of a voice note before.
What is that? It's
like,
something to do with the recording function on WhatsApp, isn't it? Because it definitely just disappears sometimes. You're in the middle of it and it's like, oh, it's gone.
yeah, or if somebody like rings you and it messes it up, doesn't it? If you're halfway through
I don't get rung very often anymore. So, do people still phone you?
I don't let them, mate. It's all turned off on my phone.
What? No one's allowed to ring you?
Well, you know that. How often?
Oh
do you
yeah,
go straight to
never
voicemail?
get through. Yeah.
But no, not many people. Like nobody rings anybody anymore. If somebody rings you, it's a bit like, fucking hell, what's going on? Why is somebody ringing me? And it's the same with the door, isn't it? If there's a knock at the door and you haven't ordered a parcel, you're like, what the? Who's at the door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Because
I still like to just ring up people, but I feel really awkward about it. I feel like I'm intruding. Whereas like,
would you ever ring anybody out of the blue, like from a work
no purpose.
perspective?
Oh,
No,
from
for
a work. Yeah. And I think I've annoyed people. When
Oh,
I do
you'd
it.
fucking annoy me, man. I hate.
I'm usually ringing you to help you.
You need to go. No, I hate it when somebody. I'm like, you need to book this shit, mate.
There's no spontaneity anymore, man.
No, there isn't, man. And I like it that way. I don't want your spontaneity. I like being spontaneous.
In an organised way.
Yeah. Or if the spontaneity comes from me. Don't bring me your spontaneity. I don't want it.
You mean spontaneity? You can have your spontaneity. That's a special job, kind.
All right. So you went to see Dungeons and Dragons. That was good.
Yeah, do you know, I think the best thing was just being with the family, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I know that feels a bit
Wanky.
vanilla. But it was a culmination of little moments. So took my youngest, she went for a horse riding lesson because she loves that. You know, we took them to the Ninja UK thing that both of us did at different times, right?
You actually went to the Ninja Warrior one?
No, not that one. Yeah, it was like similar sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one I went to weren't very good, mate.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't do none of it.
Oh, I didn't do it. I just watched them do it.
Yeah, no, but was there the adult bits there?
No.
I got up the wall.
Uh,
I got up the wall. You know the wall at the end where
Yeah.
you got to like, I got up it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Even with your toes missing? How'd you grip?
I asked the dude there, how do you do it? And he said, when it curves at the bottom, he said, when it goes straight, if you keep running, you're going to run away from the wall.
Right.
So he said, run to the top of the curve and then jump.
Wow.
Did it first time, mate.
Oh, brilliant.
The kids were well.
There's one
impressed.
in Eastbourne, which is not far from Brighton. I think I have to.
Yeah, I didn't think it was very good, man. The kids thought it was all right, but we won't be going back.
Yeah. Okay.
Failures. Give me a failure from half term, mate.
I don't think there was much of that. I mean, I would say that I probably dipped into a little bit of work when I really had intentions not to. That would probably be the biggest, but
Yeah.
that's it really.
You haven't fucking done your homework, have you?
I have. What homework? I had sudden fear
sent
from
you
like
this-
my.
I sent
my
you
head
this shit
teacher.
to go through so you had answers for everything that I asked you.
I have an answer.
The big three questions that I'm about to ask you, have you done homework on them?
What, the ones that you sent me 2 minutes ago?
No, I sent you them at about
An hour ago.
7 o'clock this
Yeah,
morning. It's not an hour ago, is it? It's 10:10.
I have.
3 hours ago. So
What, you think I'm just waiting around for your questions?
yeah.
Nah.
Yeah, you are.
No, I've done a bit of work.
I had a good half term. You gonna ask me or not?
Well, you haven't given me a chance to like get in and ask. How was your half term?
Like you, I worked for the first week, but then the second week was back. My kids got into ice skating.
Oh, okay.
Have you done that? Did you go ice skate? You got an ice skating rink
We do.
in Brighton?
No, actually, it only comes around at Christmas time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's one up the road. So the kids did that.
Do they enjoy it?
Yeah, man.
Do you?
What, ice skating?
Yeah.
I used to love it when I was younger. I did inline skating, innit?
I can just. Did you have sequins?
Well, no. I was like a proper baggy jeans, inline skates.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Not ice skating. Got you.
No, and then I got into ice skating as well because I was so good at inline skating.
Sequins?
We used to go to skate parks and that.
Okay.
And then,
Can you board?
can I board? What do you mean skateboard?
Can you skateboard?
No, but this is where I was going to go with it. So when I was like 12, 13, yeah, inline skating was the cool thing. You'd only have 2 wheels on your inline skates. You'd take the middle 2 out so that you can grind. Yeah. I got a big scar on my hand from making soap wax as well, yeah, for the curbs, yeah, so that you could grind properly on the curbs and the poles.
Oh, so you were pretty into it.
Yeah, I was into it. But then it became cool because then I became a skater dude because I was into like punk music and stuff like that. But I could never skateboard, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, but I bought one and used to carry it around with me.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could. Did you get into skateboarding?
Very briefly. I didn't go very far. Like I was only allowed to go up and down my road when I was a kid, and then I just sort of lost interest in it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I used to carry a skateboard around. We used to go to skate parks and that, mate. Do you remember how big Tony Hawk's was?
Yeah. Did you watch the podcast of him on Stephen Bartlett?
No, I've seen the advert of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Have you listened to it then?
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, I think what's really interesting about Tony Hawk and kind of what he represents, to be at the top of your game, you just got to love it and love it and love it, and just it's got to be your life.
Yeah.
And so there's this notion that, you know, to be an expert in anything, you've got to put 10,000 hours of practice in. I would say he's done, 10 times that. You know what I mean? Like he was the epitome of like pure bred, like in terms of pure thoroughbred in terms of like what he did. And yeah, I find him really, really interesting. And then like how he just blew up, and the whole world kind of blew up around him, because his name got people into skateboarding. You know what I mean? Like that weren't.
Oh,
into
he
it.
was huge, man. And
He was
the
like
game
worth over $1 billion. The game, innit?
Yeah, and the game was massive.
Yeah.
Everyone used to play.
Yeah.
Like I would play it till I fell asleep. I'd wake up in the morning and Tony Hawk would just be skating into the wall.
Yeah.
'Cause I'd fallen asleep playing it.
Yeah.
And the music on there was banging,
Yeah, it was
mate.
very good.
Yeah.
And the graphics were like so advanced when they came out, weren't they? They were like the movement and stuff like that. That's good.
That's so big, man. That's memories, man. How did we get here, Tony? Oh, you asked me if I skateboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So no, it was good. And then back to it this week. It's quite hard to get back into it on Monday, mate, because I was so switched off. I tell you something that really did. We don't do reasons to be cheerful anymore. But my daughter, my daughter.
Because there are no reasons to be cheerful.
Because the world is bad, man. My daughter's, my daughter got into ladies football. Did I tell you that? She started playing for a girls football team and that. And next season they want her playing at under 9s, and she should be under 7. So she's going to be playing 2 years up.
Wow.
She's very good at football, mate. She's 6.
So how many kids are into football now?
What, of my kids?
Yeah.
All of them are. Well, no, the 2 boys.
Yeah.
And then one of my youngest daughters. Yeah.
Wow.
And she sits and watches it more than the boys.
The games.
She'll sit and watch the football on the telly and talk about the game and everything. She's only 6, mate. She's going to be the next big thing, I reckon. That's my ticket out. I'm going to be one of them.
You're going to fade.
She played right on Sunday, and the guy who like volunteers as the coach for a girls team, yeah. Like I say, it's under 8s this season that she's playing at. Under 8s, girls team. He's reffing, has to call whether it's corner, throw in, all himself, as well as manage the team.
Right.
He got a corner drastically. It was drastically wrong, right? It should have been a corner, and he gave a goal kick to our team, yeah?
Yeah.
There's this bloke on the sideline shouting, "You cheat! You cheat!" I was like, oh my days, man. Like, kids football at that age, and you're calling a bloke who's volunteering a cheat. I had it out with him, didn't I?
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened to your body language? You kind of, it's almost as though you
I was so
went back
angry.
to that place where you were.
I was so angry. I said to Leo, I might have to go home. Because he was going, shut up. I never said cheat. And I was like, you called him a cheat. I was like, be upset. It was a corner or whatever. But don't call the man a cheat. I was like, you can go and ref the game if you want.
You fed the fire.
Yeah, I did, mate. It caused a bit of a ding dong on the
I
side.
saw it on social media. 2 dads arguing at
I
kids'
reckon he
football
was
game.
a granddad.
Bit like you.
Anyway,
Yes.
I'm going to read you these questions now. I've got 3 questions for you, Has.
Okay.
I'm going to come at you with the first one.
Okay.
We will both answer the question.
Okay.
All right? We'll do each question each. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The first question. What's one thing about your job or field? And your job or field is a founder, CEO mainly. That's what I want to cover from you.
Yeah.
So what's one thing about your job or field of expertise that almost no one agrees with you about? And I'm going to have a smint while you think about it.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say almost no one, do you mean other founders or do you mean just general society?
Either or.
Okay. I think that as a founder, as an entrepreneur, someone who's building a business and trying to kind of scale a business. So scaling often means that you've got fewer resources and you've got lots of work, right? And I think the current sort of cultural reflections about work and burnout are that actually hard work is stigmatized. It's not fashionable. And actually to build stuff, you have to work hard. That means evenings sometimes. That means weekends sometimes. And I appreciate that. For me, it's going to be quite natural because I'm trying to build it and I'm trying to create something. But I think people that join a fast growth business need to understand that that's part of the game. And I don't think it's very fashionable. And I think it's a hard one because I also believe that people need to create boundaries for themselves. But I also need balance as a founder.
Yeah. It's quite a new phenomenon, this kickback against hard work, isn't it?
Newish, yeah.
Do you
like
think,
a few
because
years.
you had like when your man Gary V got massive, and it was all like hustle, grind, work when people are asleep and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That got massive and big. And then I feel like this pendulum swung right the other way now. And everyone's like, you shouldn't be working hard like at all or remotely. It's like as if you're going to be able to grow anything of any meaning, but do it meditating 4 hours every single day still and not, never getting into your red zone.
Yeah, I look. I think we're being kind of extreme in our kind of portrayals of this, right? So I don't even mean that that you're burning yourself out. I'm just talking about that little point where you get past the comfort zone, and actually you got to go into this place where you got to go slightly into the red zone, right?
Yeah.
Consistently showing up in that way means that there's something wrong with the organization, right? If actually you're working really hard but not getting results and actually people are having to work hard, then there's something wrong with me. I get that. But actually, if it's all in pursuit of trying to create abundance for us all, we've all got a part to play in it. And it is different to working in a big enterprise where there's a lot more infrastructure, right? So if you choose it, if you opt into that, then understand that that's going to be the case.
I think there's a generational thing there as well, right? Because when I look at the resilience work that I do, and this is a I don't know if I've talked about this before, but this is a realization I've had literally in recent months. I would always deliver resilience training from the perspective of you're overworking yourself and you need to come back a bit more central and know that you need a bit of break and like you need to give yourself a little bit of space. And resilience doesn't mean you keep moving forward no matter what. You have to take your foot off the gas, sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is that there's a shift, and the next, like the younger generation that are coming into work today differ in that the previous generation, a generation that I would probably put myself in, so my sort of age and maybe above and maybe even a little bit younger than me, would tend, a natural state is to overwork. But I feel like the new generation that I work with their natural state feels a little bit more like they actually need to develop a bit more of the toughness and bring in a bit more overworking, like work into their red zone a bit more. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Neither's wrong or right, by the
Yeah.
way. Neither's right or wrong. And like the sweet spot for resilience is where your toughness meets your ability to be able to recover.
I think there's a layer of complexity that we should bring in here, which is, you know, the generation that we kind of touched the fringes of and that preceded us, right, was very capitalist driven. Like it was focused on kind of, you know, job for life, or, you know, jobs, and you've got to kind of work to this system that you didn't really have a choice in. I think what I'm sensing is that people feel like, well, it's much harder in life now than it was then, in terms of our ability to create wealth, to create abundance, to create opportunities to get on the housing ladder and stuff like that. So it almost feels like people are owning their own boundaries a bit more. But I do think that in doing that, it's exactly what you're saying, is that I think it's because there's a bubble that's being created that stops you from going into that zone. And because you're trying to protect yourself. And I think the issue is, once you get into a kind of a different phase of life, you're not protected. Like, and so all of this stuff, when you've got to kind of accumulate, or you've got to, you know, care for other dependents or get yourself on the ladder, it's very, very difficult, you know, to continue to operate in that way, thinking that the world is continually like going to keep you in a bubble.
Yeah. And that's the transition that becomes difficult, right? Is how do you make sure that people are developing? Because life is hard, life is tough, yeah? And I think it's unrealistic to teach people that it's not.
Yeah.
When the world is tough. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's probably a conversation for a whole nother podcast. But I do think there's something around that. And I really notice it, right? And I'm speaking to a lot of genuinely speak to a lot of founders or even high achievers who, and this won't be fashionable to say, who feel like there's a lot of people around at the moment that are not willing to do the hard work. Yeah. And I do think the mental health conversation, the one that I'm involved in and that I'm part of, I do think that if we're not careful, because when you shape every difficult emotion as struggling mental health, right? Then the moment you start to feel a bit of stress, you know, when I think of all the good things that I've built in my career and the things that I'm trying to do, I built them under stress. I took the stress and I was like, fucking, I need to do something positive with this, yeah? But if I shape every time I have a difficult emotion or feeling as struggling mental health, yeah, then you create a problem.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I also,
and it's a very nuanced conversation.
I also am very aware that myself and a lot of other founders, I'm building my dream.
Yeah.
So of course I'm going to have a different point of view on it. You know, I imagine, you know, so we don't just sound like two old farts who are overgeneralizing about a different generation. Although we do a lot of work in this space and we see it, I think there's also some truth that if, you know, individuals who are building to their own dream, they have a different kind of approach to it, you know. But a lot of the people that maybe we're talking about are ones that have just taken jobs, right, in someone else's dream. So it's about how do you kind of bring people and get them more connected to the purpose of what you're trying to build, so that everyone feels like they have a part to play in it and there's kind of benefit to operating differently. I think that's the key thing, is not about like chastising, but saying, okay, if you're here, how do we make it so that actually you feel like you want to do what, you know, everything you can. Yeah. And that isn't, by the way, just about working hours. It's about, sometimes it's about attitude, sometimes it's about energy, it's about kind of output, commitment, whatever it is. Sometimes just showing up in the right way. That's all it is.
Yeah, really good point.
What about you?
Okay, so mine's, I don't want to spend too much time on it because I am conscious of time, but mine is that, is about addiction, really. And like in the space that I operate in, call it the mental health space or what the healing space or whatever, addiction is still always seen as this kind of individualistic thing that happens. Like you either get addicted to alcohol or you get addicted. My belief is that we are all addicts. Everybody struggles with addiction of some kind. And the people that think they are addiction free just don't recognize the things that they're, using in order to be able to escape the ways that they feel.
Yeah.
And it kind of feeds into what we're just talking about, you know, like, there's that whole, like, am I addicted to my work? Am I like the quote unquote workaholic, or am I just following my passion? And actually, I think the truth is that for a lot of us, we're a mix of all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, if you look at like, a successful sports person, yeah, like the likelihood is that they've given up a hell of a lot in their life to be able to pursue that thing that they're doing. Yeah. And they've had to do it. Like, you started off by saying you almost have to be obsessed with what we talked about Tony Hawk, yeah?
Yeah.
You have to be obsessed with what you're doing. I'm obsessed with what I do. I'm obsessed with it in a sometimes unhealthy way.
Are you obsessed with the doing or the results?
Both.
Is one a means to an end?
I think I'm probably more obsessed with the doing.
Liar.
What do you mean?
Well, sorry, I don't mean to call you out, but we were having a conversation about what drives you. So like, and you said to me last week, I hit this target, and then as soon as I've done it, I'm like, that's not good enough. I want to hit the next one.
Yeah, but what drives that? What drives that? I need to find a fucking something else. Otherwise, I'm just stuck here in this place with myself.
Not the results. It's not the results.
Maybe I create the results because I need something to do.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm talking about when it comes to addiction.
Yeah.
Like, the truth is probably that it's a mixture of all of them. Yeah, like everything is. But let me hone in a little bit more, magnify it. When on half term, like we just talked about, yeah, when I get my work emails out, or I start doing something work related during half term when I felt like I didn't want to do it, it ain't because I'm fucking worried about results.
Yeah.
It's because something ain't quite right, and I need to find something to do so I don't have to be in myself.
Yeah.
When I look at Inner You, yeah, was I driven to build Inner You solely by wanting to help everybody in the world and like change people's lives? That was part of it. But it'd be egotistical of me to pretend that I was driven solely by that.
Yeah.
I was also driven by a fucking need to do something and not be who I am in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that gets missed, because we all like to portray the nicest version of ourselves.
Yeah. Something that just popped into my head is I'm addicted to email.
Yeah.
So when you asked me what did I fail at, it wasn't that I did a bit of work. I fed my addiction to email.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And people do that all of the time. And then this is what happens. And this is why, you know, when I look at conversations, particularly on LinkedIn, by the way, for example, that are like slagging company cultures off left, right, and center, you know, you're making people always be on. I'm like, sometimes, because I'll go in organizations, right? And you'll have one person who says, I feel like I always have to be on here. Yeah. Someone else from the same organization doing the same role will go, no. I'm when it gets to 8 o'clock, I turn my emails off and nobody can get hold of me. So is it culture? Yeah. Or is there some power within each and every single individual? And again, like everything, it's always a combination of the things, yeah? But how can two people in the same organization have different experiences?
We could dig into that, right? And we haven't got time to do it now. But what we have to also, so yes is the answer. So I agree with what you're saying, yeah? It is both. It's about self-accountability, empowerment, agency at an individual level, but it is also about culture as well. And we also need to think about intersectionalism as well. So what we don't know is the circumstances around those two people. So one could be a single parent black mother, right? Who is potentially, not to kind of cast stereotypes, but who's potentially worried about the job. So the feeling of needing to be always on might be different to somebody who's actually, married, comfortable, two earners in the house. So actually there's another layer to it that we shouldn't not explore.
And you know what's interesting as well is my opinion on it when I was first starting out and money was hard to come by would have been completely different to what it is now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same.
However, or not however, and at the core of that, yeah, what we are talking about here is, so the example that you gave, which was one single parent or whatever that's struggling for money and stuff like that, yeah, and then you take another person who's in a position of much more privilege, right? Still at the core of what we're talking about it there is that fundamental need to do something. Now, the first example is driven by what I would call collective, perhaps generational trauma, yeah? Which is why healing should always be collective. Because in the end, when you trace everyone's trauma back, yeah, trace it far enough, and what you'll find is it's societal, group kind of community trauma, yeah? If I trace mine back, yeah, my trauma at the expense of my dad's drinking, my dad, when he was younger, was fostered at a very young age, yeah, his parents then were trapped in addiction, and all that, they weren't supported in the way that they were. So it's always a mixture of individual empowerment alongside collective and community empowerment.
Yeah.
And this is why, by the way, you'll get spiritual gurus online who will talk about the only person who can change your situation is you. Yeah. The only person, you know, you're in a victim mentality, and it's way more complex than that. And these spiritual gurus will say, concentrate on yourself. You should, you know, healing is about changing yourself and what you do for you. That's all you can do. And I'm like, actually, that's closer to fucking narcissism than it is healing.
Yeah.
Because once you start to heal, I think you should start to be compelled to look at the structures and everything that goes with it in the way that you said.
100%. For people that do work in the inclusion space, it's, you know, people first used to talk about diversity, then they started talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now they talk about belonging, and that's really, really important, because it shouldn't be up to that individual person to have to make the changes alone and get agency themselves. The environment around them should also make them feel like they belong, right? And actually, so it isn't then just about, you know, the individual's efforts. There is always some level of control that we need to keep within ourselves around what we do, what we don't do, what we can and what we can't do. But also, if you're basically trying to push water uphill, you're going to struggle, right? So actually having the environment around you create conditions to make whatever changes or whatever boundaries you want to set work for you and work for everyone. That's the key.
Yeah, and that's why equity, that's what equity is going to look like in a culture for the two examples that you gave, is how do you make both of those people feel safe?
Yeah.
In that environment? How do you make them feel safe to not have to open the emails?
Yeah.
Fucking yeah. Very good. Right, I'm going to do one more of these questions before we move on. One more of the three. Okay, let's just go to this one. What's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Give away more stuff for free than you expect to receive. So my philosophy has always been, be generous, pay it forward, don't expect anything in return, and you just get surprised by the results. Not only is it, look, it's not totally altruistic. I feel good. I feel good sharing. I feel good seeing other people benefit from kind of my experience and kind of what I know, and then it makes me feel good seeing them grow. But the most joy I get is actually when somebody just gets value, and they're often in a vulnerable place. They might have just left their job, or they're about to leave their job, or change their economic circumstance, or that's happened to them, and actually just giving them a bit of something for free when they don't expect it. Because obviously, as you know, I charge a lot for this stuff as well to other parts of my network. So to be able to do that is a really important thing. But the benefit is that you create these really wonderful ripple effects, right? Because then that person goes out and does brilliant stuff, and hopefully they then also do a similar thing. So I think give away more for free than you might expect to.
Yeah, and you live that as well, don't you? Probably to your detriment sometimes. Do you know what I mean? You actually do live that. Do you think there's some sort of like universal thing that happens? You know, people say it's the universe or something that's a power greater than you. You know, like karma. Some people talk about karma. Do you believe in that stuff? You know, like, because sometimes I will have a literal feeling where I'm like, I'm gonna fucking give some stuff away.
Yeah.
Just knowing that if I do that, the world or the universe or whatever it is will give me back more.
Yeah, I do. I do genuinely believe that. And I think the fact that my business collectively has grown over the last almost decade without me actually having to do any proactive new business outreach is a testament to that. And it isn't just about business. It's about, I have a really, really, really strong network of friends, colleagues, associates that I know I could pick up the phone to at any time because we've created this thing for each other. And I definitely believe that you just put it out and you get it back.
It's community, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you're talking about is like our age of community.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Building that around you and then always knowing. That's the one thing that I probably learned from you and from what I've learned from you, and then that kind of growing community. I remember when I was in the early stages of knowing you, and I would be like, I don't know, I need someone I could do with like chatting to somebody who knows how to do this job here, yeah? And I always used to be amazed because you'd be like, oh yeah, I know this guy, yeah? He's in LA, but let me just drop him, like, do you know what I mean? It would be some different part of the world. And I was like, that's fucking like so good that you've like got a community like that.
Yeah.
And then I slowly began to like build that myself and realize how empowering it is. And now like somebody will say to me, I need this. And I'm like, I know a guy. Do you know what I mean? I know somebody that I could, it's good, man. It's powerful.
I often, suffering a detriment. The only detriment is time.
Yeah.
But not energy.
No.
I actually, I feed off of this stuff as well. So again, it isn't altruistic. I get stuff back from it. But I think I won't change. Like I would probably end up working more hours and not take that bit away because it's really, really important. It's really important.
Yeah.
And you just benefit from it. You benefit from it. It's intangible, but you benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, look what you did for me, and now look how I've been carrying you for about 2 years now.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Right. My answer to the question. What's one lesson in your job that your job has taught you?
Yours is just take free shit from people that give free stuff away, innit?
Keep atting Fred Perry to see if they'll do collab with me. No, mine is, and I've probably talked about this a bit before on here, but attempting to be liked by everyone will end with you being lost and almost completely alone in this world. That's the big thing that I've learned through my work and through growing an audience in the way that I have, is that if you consistently try and make everybody like you and please everybody, you're going to end up saying nothing at all. You're going to end up standing for nothing at all. And you'll ultimately lead a life that's rooted in abandoning yourself to make sure that everybody else is okay.
Wow, that's really powerful. I still struggle with that a little bit. I think you know that, right? Like, so I think this is probably, this 3 years of doing this has really pushed me forward into not holding this persona, this professional persona, and actually being more true to who I am. But I still got work to do. I will write posts on LinkedIn that are sharp and edgy and pointy, and I won't post them because I'm worried about the impact. So I've still got work to do on that because I'm worried about probably not being liked by everyone.
Or not pleasing certain.
Or not pleasing
people,
or actually being the antithesis of what people expect me to be.
Yeah. And that's like true in like the quote unquote healing game, the healing space that I'm in. You know, I used to have this persona that, you know, I should make sure that I don't swear. I should like make sure that I overpronounce my words, you know, make sure that all of my judginess that exists, and I can be very judgy, that I make sure that I hide it all, and I be this version of myself that is spiritual, you know, and then I realized, but that ain't who I am. Like, I am a bit sweary. My humor can be a little bit like, I like humor that's a little bit near the knuckle. I'm like overly judgy, but I'm also fully aware of those things. Do you know what I mean? And I know that I'm working my hardest to not act on my judgments and to recognize that so much of my judgment is projection of my own stuff and all of that. And being much more comfortable in being myself. And by the way, I think that is what the healing journey is. Because I think what most people need to heal from is chronic people pleasing. Is chronic self-organization, yeah? Is chronic make sure I don't show these versions of myself because then these people won't like me, you know? And to be liked is different. To be liked is to go, here's who I am, take me or leave me. And if you don't like it, then I'm okay with that and I'm comfortable with that. Or I can deal with it because I ain't comfortable with it, you know? Because even like when I see how that plays out, by the way, because on Instagram earlier, I'm wearing all the rings, yeah. Did you see on my stories? I put over the top with the rings, yeah? Yes or no, and let people vote. I'm fucking looking at everyone that said yeah, and I'm like, I didn't think you'd say yeah. I didn't think you'd tell me.
Yeah, and then you'd be like, well, look at the clothes you wear. Who are you to talk?
You're just fucking jealous that you can't wear loads of rings. But you see, like, so I know it's there, but that's you know, that's self-understanding, self-actualization. That's what it's about. Yeah. Right, I'm going to move us on because we should have been where we're going way, way sooner than we are. So, Has, I'm going to start with the second question. I'm going to avoid the first one, actually.
Okay. Better be a good one, huh?
It's kind of feeds into some of the things that we talked about. Will being a nice person always win through?
No.
No.
Short answer, no.
No.
And I think that could sound contradictory to what I just said around give stuff away for free and being kind. But there is a saying that I don't think is culturally sensitive anymore, but it makes a point that is don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Mm-hmm. Forget about knives and guns, and actually what the point behind it is, don't come ill prepared. And I think too often if you misunderstand the environment in which you're operating and you just bring your niceness, you're not going to get what you need. And it doesn't mean be not nice or be horrible or be evil, but you have to just understand that sometimes you've got to operate in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I bring it up is in light of the recent Labour, they're calling it Labour's ad campaign that attacks the Tories. I actually think that's kind of questionable in some ways anyway. They've ran these series of ads. One of them is a picture of Rishi Sunak and it says, do you think adults convicted of sexually assaulting children should go to prison? And then it says, Rishi Sunak doesn't. And it's quite a big shift in the way that Labour have operated over the last 13 years. Mm-hmm. And maybe saying that in and of itself shows why there's been a big shift, because they haven't been in for 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I think they have to do it.
Yeah.
I think they have to do it. And they have actually been not really operating as, the opposition. And they've been quite gentle and quite nice and hoping that everyone watches Prime Minister's Question Times on Wednesday afternoon when everyone's at work, right?
Yeah.
So how do we know that there's a fight back going on? They're never being publicly challenged. So you have to kind of come at it in the same way. Now, you can feel dismay at that approach and feel like almost you're resorting to low-level tactics. But if you kind of take the high ground and keep missing and kind of don't, shift the paradigm and move yourself into power, then actually you're just perpetuating. So I'd rather deal with some shitty attack ads and a shift in government than being nice and being holier than thou and still having Tories for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I can deal with that.
And I think there's a problem with being holier than thou anyway, right? It's like I want anybody that's leading anything to seek truth and call out truth, right? And be like, this is the reality, and say things quite clearly. I want people to stand for something, yeah? And so, like, even that ad that I read out, I mean, I think if that's cutthroat, then like Labour, I would say they need to do even more, man, and really pull them apart. Listen, by the way, I think probably the reason that they don't, no MP ever gets overly bullish, yeah, is because they're all sitting on stuff that if they start going too much for the juggler, then they'll just come back for the juggler and call on them anyway.
Well, look, some Labour MPs have said this isn't very Labour. Some quite senior people, this isn't very Labour. This isn't us. We shouldn't resort to these sorts of tactics. Others have come out strong and saying, yeah, we stand behind it. We're going to do more, expect more. So this could just be the start. I can see where it goes though. And like, if you see it, like attack ads in America, they're brutal. They're absolutely brutal, and they get very personal. And so I do understand where it goes. So as long as we sort of keep it about voting records and how they operate as MPs and representatives, then I think it's fair game. And let's also remember that the Tory party have been doing this for years very successfully, and that's what's put them in power. We need a change in government. We absolutely need a change in government. And so if that requires operating in a similar way, so be it.
And look, I think sometimes we live in a world now, particularly, you know, where power doesn't change unless something big happens. And this is another thing that I wanted to touch on, right? There's been a lot of protests going on now, yeah? To me, it feels like there's a protest going on every week. The latest one with junior doctors, they reckon nearly 200,000 operations were missed as a result of these protests. How do you feel about that? What's your opinion on that? Do you think it's the right thing for these protesters to do?
It's hard to kind of lump them all into one, but I think that's part of the problem, right? When you see so many of them, you start to not pay attention to them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a problem, because you get a bit of protest fatigue, which I think is what's kind of setting in. You almost gloss over some of the key issues. Now, obviously, for those individuals, groups is really important, and it's the way you make people listen, right? The fact that, you know, operations are being cancelled, you have people's attention.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then the government doesn't come to the table.
Yeah.
Right. So I understand we've talked a lot about our belief in striking and, you know, and holding the government to account, and this is the way they do it. I think it's really interesting. If you look at junior doctors and you look at, I think the average starting salary is around 29,000 for a junior doctor.
Yeah.
Right. Now, some people might go, well, that's quite a lot of money compared to what I get. But I think there's also other things to think about, which is there's a lot that goes into that, right? But also, these are people that are tasked with saving lives, right?
Yeah.
And so you want them to be adequately rewarded for the input that they've done to get to that level, and then continuing to operate at the right level. But the other thing that isn't spoken about is the unpaid overtime. So let's say a normal working week is 37 and a half, 40 hours.
Yeah.
Doctors are probably pulling 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
So actually that number goes down significantly.
Yeah.
And then when you've got inflation going up, I can totally understand it.
And it's also, by the way, I haven't pulled it up and I haven't got it with me, but I saw, I think it was like a social media post or whatever that showed the starting salary of junior doctors in loads of different countries. And ours was like lowest by a good few thousand in comparison to all these other countries. Yeah. Did you see the protests by MPs for their latest pay rise?
Oh, I didn't see that MPs had protested.
No, they didn't protest. That's why you didn't see it. But they got a fucking pay rise.
Yes.
Yeah, alongside inflation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what really annoys me. Yeah. That went right under the radar.
Yeah.
Was not talked about too much on the news. Yeah. Like none of that was shown. I saw another stat that said if you take the money spent on test and trace during COVID, you could give the junior doctors a pay rise every year for the next 50 years by about, and you could give them 5% every year. And that's not a stab at COVID, but we must remember that test and trace was something that was fucking handed out to the Tories' mates. Yeah. And this is like the big, big problem that we've got is, and this is why protests have to happen. We've talked about this in the past, but anything of any value to the average person on the street as always has to come through protest. When you look at basic rights for women when they started with the suffragettes, it came from what was people doing things they fucking shouldn't have been doing at the time, and that everybody would have said this is disgusting, yeah? But it happened, and thank God it happened, right? My concern, and what you said is right, is this protest fatigue that's coming in, right? Nobody, for some reason, well, for whatever reason it is, people don't go, fucking hell, man, the Tories have been in for 13 years and there's a protest every week. People go, what's wrong with people? Why is everybody protesting so much? And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Did you, I know you did because I spoke to you about it, but the protests that happened at the Grand National.
Yeah.
Now, this is why I think protests matter and they're important, yeah? Do you watch the Grand National?
Yeah.
Ever betted on it?
Yep.
Yeah, so have I. I used to get the kids to bet on it and all that sort of stuff. One of my closest friends was a jockey. I loved to gamble and stuff like that when I was a kid. I was listening to Talk Sport the day before the Grand National, and the guy who was running the protests was on there. Very calm, yeah. And they were hammering him on Talk Sport, yeah. And he stayed calm. He said that, I think it was one horse that dies every 2 days in horse riding.
Really?
One horse dies every 2 days in horse riding.
In racing or just?
In horse racing, yeah.
Right.
One every 2 days. One horse dies every 2 days. He was like, that's not that. And then they were like, yeah, but the people that raise these horses and look after them, they love them. And he said, yeah, they love them. And they're treated like royalty in a lot of cases until they're not. And I wouldn't send my child out. Yeah. Like, love my child and treat him like royalty, but send them out to race every weekend where they might die. Yeah. And I heard this guy, and they were causing enough alarm that he had got on Talk Sport. Yeah. A radio that I happen to listen to all the time. And he changed my mind. And I was like, fuck, man, I can't do the Grand National anymore. Can't. In fact, I would probably back people saying it needs to stop. Yeah. Because, all he kept saying was, we love animals. We're supposed to be an animal-loving country. Yeah. And he was like, and yet we allow this to happen.
It's really interesting because a lot of the talk that was coming from the racing circles was just how frustrating and how they were putting the health of the horses on the protesters because the horses were having to wait and get agitated.
One of the horse died at the jump, and they're saying it was because the protesters had unsettled the horse.
But I think that same guy was like, but let's not forget, this is about people getting on a horse, racing and betting and making money for the owners, and for other people to make money. That's what this is about. This isn't about war horses going in and saving lives and giving their lives over to kind of save humans. This is basically horse racing. So I can understand where that comes from. I thought it was quite interesting that the media rounded on them as being a bit of a nuisance because who owns newspapers?
And
who owns the media? They're the people that own racehorses.
And this is the problem that we've got, is how much society is now driven by that common narrative, and they're all sat at the same table. They're all sat at the same table. We talked about it on a previous podcast with Gary, the whole thing with Gary Lineker. I don't think we went into it in depth. Maybe we didn't talk about it in the podcast and talked about it separately. But the chairman of the BBC is a Tory donor, man. And so, BBC cut a certain episode of David Attenborough talking about climate change because they were worried about how much it would upset the right.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about what we do with this podcast is trying to help people that do listen to this to understand this ain't a big conspiracy theory, that it's all that's not what it is, What is definite a fact is that people in power at the very top are all sat at the same table, pulling the strings. And that's why protest matters. That's as annoying as it sometimes might be, in anything. That's why it matters, The horse racing is a prime example where I was able to change my opinion on something. Why? Because they fucking protested at the Grand National, so TalkSport got them on the radio.
Let me ask you one question, and we probably won't be able to answer it here. So it may be when we come back for this. But can too much protest ultimately minimize the impact of the protests? So, for example, you know, them going into a snooker hall and covering a snooker table with orange powder, over time, does society and the infrastructure start to prepare for it and almost shut it down before it even has its impact?
I don't know, man. It's a difficult question, isn't it?
Can't answer it.
Because if the answer is yes, too much protest in the end, then those in power are rubbing their hands together.
Yeah.
Because they just think, just sit it out. People will get too annoyed with them.
What I think it potentially paves the way for is a more of a general uprising, right? Where people just feel like, okay, there's nothing there's everything we've tried doesn't work, and so that's why you had sort of uprisings in certain parts of the world where they were protesting against oppressive regimes, and that's what drives change, when people suddenly have had enough. And we've always been quite controlled, kettlebelled, if you like, at a macro level. I think that's coming. I think it's got to be coming. Like when people are living in poverty, when their rights are being taken, when their abundance is limited, when their opportunities are limited, when they're pointing people and communities at each other rather than looking at where it should happen. That's what stokes the fire. I'm really surprised that we haven't had a major riots like we had,
So am I, man. Right. I think, well, let's see. The next election's going to be crazy, man. When is it?
It's next year, isn't it?
Is it? It's going to be crazy, man. There's some shit's going to go down when that happens, but let's see. Mate, enjoyed this today. If you're listening, come and join us on Instagram, 115 Miles Pod, and make sure that you leave us a review on whatever platform you listen on. Enjoyed it. Cheers, mate.